So check it. ESPN's lead analyst for the draft, Matt Miller, just dropped his latest mock draft earlier this week, and it was a 2-round mock draft, obviously with a couple teams not having a first-round draft pick, meaning the Panthers and the Cleveland Browns. Most of these draft analysts are going to drop 2-round draft picks just to get a full perspective on what every team is going to do on the first day of the draft and also the beginning of the second day of the draft. And this one had some surprises in my opinion, especially when it comes to the Carolina Panthers, because at the top of the draft in the second round, they made a pretty intriguing pick, none other than McConkey, wide receiver out of the University of Georgia, who is coming off of a stellar Senior Bowl week. And this may be a polarizing figure for the Panthers fan base, but I want to talk about how Matt Miller got to this, not just the pick. We're going to talk about the philosophy and his thinking about it and what my feelings are about it. But I want to also start from the beginning in the first round just to show how picks 1 through 32 materialized before getting to McConkey. But before I get too deep in that, my name is Aaron Duncan here with the Necessary Blunt and Sports Talk. Recap and analysis of the Carolina Panthers is what I do on this channel. And I promise you, nobody's putting more content out like me. They're not doing it like me. I hate to toot my own horn, but toot, beep, beep. Nobody's putting it down like your boy on these streets. So make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, the bell icon as well. That's going to make sure you get notified when I do my own mock drafts, but I'm also going to be analyzing these mock drafts as we go from certain experts and pretty much find out what that mock do. You know what I'm saying? And it's something like what the kids say, what that mock do. Whatever, something like that. But also give this video a thumbs up because it really helps me out in the algorithm. Only takes you about 2 seconds, and that engagement means everything. It doesn't cost you a thing, and I really appreciate that. But of course, if you do want to show some support, you can leave a super thanks down below. It's the $ within the heart. It's a tip jar for creators. I really appreciate anything on this independent creator journey because I do it for the people. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up his mock draft in the article from ESPN, and right here, of course, the first 3 picks are going to be quarterback. Going to have Caleb Williams, of course, Drake May, and New England. New England taking Jaden Daniels. No surprises here. The only thing I'll probably say would be questionable is depending on what the Commanders are going to do with Dan Quinn at the as their new head coach. You know what I'm saying? With do they trade up and try to go get Caleb Williams? We see the speculation, of course, with Cliff Kingsbury, but do they trade back and get more picks because they're not a quarterback away? They could run back with Sam Howell, try to get some more assets in there as well by trading back and maybe either trading up in next year's draft because there's a couple guys coming out, or they try to get somebody later in the draft like Michael Penix, Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, maybe even. Who knows what they would do, but that's the only one I think is suspect. But as we get into the wide receiver run, there's going to be 4, 5, and 6. Of course, wide receiver 1 is going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. No surprise there. This dude is 6'4". He's the all-everything guy. He's been NFL ready for a couple years now. No surprise there getting him there with Kyler Murray. Malik Neighbors going to the Chargers, a great yak receiver to give Justin Herbert somebody to work with. Obviously, with Jim Harbaugh as the new coach, it's going to be bringing some new blood and somebody explosive for this guy, because some people do have Neighbors ahead of Marvin Harrison. I don't, you know what I'm saying? I'm just not going to do that, but very interesting pick. And of course, Roma Dunze going to New York to join and play with Daniel Jones. They have a couple other guys, Jalen Hyatt, who they got last year, who's a speed guy, but Roma Dunze just gives them the full package. I'm a big Roma Dunze guy. So 3 wide receivers in the top 6 picks. Very interesting. But if we continue to matriculate down the draft, there's not going to be another wide receiver right here with Cincinnati. Cincinnati is going to take him. Now, this is a very interesting philosophy at 18 because a lot of people expect 6, 7, maybe even 8 wide receivers to go in this first round. This is very interesting though for Matt Miller's take on it. He has Brian Thomas Jr. here, another LSU wide receiver going there. And of course, T. Higgins is going to be a free agent. Tyler Boyd is as well. Jamar Chase will be coming up getting that bag. And Joe Burrow just got his bag. Now, Brian Thomas here, I think there's going to be an interesting philosophy here. So I want to talk to you real quick because I think there's going to be some type of renaissance in terms of wide receiver. I have these football theories, every year about how roster construction continues to change. Obviously, people are this whole don't draft running backs, they're easily replaceable. That's not here nor there. I think there's going to be something going on with the suppressed wide receiver market last year. A lot of people were not making a lot of money. There weren't really huge extensions signed like the year before when you had Tyreek, DJ Moore. A lot of guys just got paid that year. And last year really kind of suppressed the market to try to really put a little bit of hush to these contracts because they were starting to blow up to $20, potentially $25 million with guys like Jefferson and Jamar Chase in the pipeline. It made sense that there's some kind of group effort by the league, collusion of whatnot to suppress these deals. Now, I think it seems like every year we're talking about this is such a deep wide receiver class. It's such a deep wide receiver class. I think that that's for good reasons. It's actually legit wide receivers. We saw the impact of guys in the second round like Rashee Rice, Tank Dell, Jaden Reed, guys coming out right away and making impacts with their teams to the point that you can start to easily replace wide receivers by really just taking shots in the dark, looking for particular traits that can make early impact in terms of those separators. But I also think it's because instead of these guys signing these guys to these big deals, they're going to start letting some of these wide receivers walk. They're going to start trading some of these wide receivers that have huge contracts and just move on to other teams that are desperate. There's certain teams that maybe feel like they're a wide receiver away for their young quarterback, like Panthers or who else they may have, Tennessee or somebody like that. And they're going to trade them there and then draft their own young guy and just bring him up and redo it again. That way you don't have to pay these inflating deals. So I just think that may be where a lot of these teams are going. And I think that could be the philosophy of what Matt Miller's here thinking with bringing Brian Thomas, who is 6'4", almost just as tall as T. Higgins. A little bit different game, of course, because he's a big play threat compared to T. Higgins, who is more of a 50-50 guy, can't get down the field. But Brian Thomas Jr. going to Cincinnati, it makes sense. I think it could be something to be said about the wide receiver renaissance. Moving on to the next wide receiver chosen, and that's going to be to the Cowboys. And they took Keon Coleman, wide receiver out of Florida State, another big body wide receiver, 6'4", 215, 11 touchdowns, big 50-50 ball guy for the red zone. Needs a little bit of fine tuning in terms of the route tree and stuff like that. The production was a little bit questionable as well in his Florida State years. I think the Michigan State tape looked a little bit better in terms of production, but the polish and stuff in his Florida State film is a little bit more evident right there. But I still think there's some questions in terms of production and just the separation factor. Regardless, he will be wide receiver number 2 to CeeDee Lamb. Like I said, they got CeeDee, they got rid of Amari Cooper a couple years ago. That's the philosophy here for the Dallas Cowboys, going with wide receiver. And so the next wide receiver on this list is not going to be chosen until the end of the first round, pick number 32, and that's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. And they decide to take Xavier Worthy, the super speedster, probably the fastest wide receiver in this draft class, very thin. Of course, we know that they had Tyreek Hill. This is not a Tyreek Hill clone. I think Tyreek Hill is way better after the catch, but Xavier Worthy can do similar things. And I think Patrick Mahomes would love to have another guy that can take the top off of a defense yet again. That's going to open up things underneath for his other weapons, and including Travis Kelce. People are going to be pissing the pants next year in terms of what the Chiefs can do offensively, and I just think that's crazy. So going into the second round with Vlad McConkey being number 33 to the Panthers, let's talk about it. Because let's look at his philosophy here. He said the Panthers didn't do a great job surrounding Bryce Young with talent at wide receiver in 2023 and must make major additions this offseason. McConkey is the best route runner in the draft with excellent stop-start quickness and acceleration out of his cuts. He's also sure-handed enough to be the Panthers' number 1 receiving option. Wow. So, Matt Miller, he said he thinks that despite people think that he's only 5'11", 180 something, and Caucasian, people don't really respect Vlad McConkey for a second. I'm not in that party. I love McConkey's game. I think separators and route runners translate the most. He may not have the highest ceiling out of other guys that are still on the board, because let's look at it. Other guys that are still on the board are A.D. Mitchell, Tez, Troy, Xavier Legette, Wilson, Roman Wilson. Other guys that are there that are highly touted are chosen after Vlad McConkey in this spot. But I think that with a quarterback like Bryce Young, who likes to throw with time, anticipation, likes to throw the spots on the field, needs a dependable route runner like Vlad McConkey. So this makes a lot of sense in my eyes, and I think people are really underestimating Ladd McConkey's role. Yes, we do need a wide receiver one, and can he be that right away? Probably. Can he be that long term? No. I would love to go into free agency and get a T. Higgins. You know what I'm saying? Or a Calvin Ridley. You know what I'm saying? Like somebody like that. But I think Ladd McConkey is a safe option, a high floor, maybe not as high as ceiling as some of these other guys, but we've seen time and time again wide receivers that can separate, translate, and make impact right away, despite the size, despite the measurables. If you put them in an opportunity to succeed and give them space, and they separate, you can get production out of them. I talked about Jaden Reed earlier. I definitely talked about Tank Dell. These are guys that we saw at the Senior Bowl last year really dominate with separation and getting that, and they translate it right away, going in the second round, just like they have Ladd McConkey here. It may not be the flashiest pick that some Panthers fans may want. You may be gushing over these 6'3", 6'4" wide receivers that can do the 50-50 ball, but their route running probably can't hold a candle to Ladd McConkey. And right now, we need a route runner. He'll probably be the best route runner in team history as soon as he's drafted, just because of the nuances from the releases, from the nuances to the top of the routes, his ability to win with leverage and stems and stuff. I really love McConkey's game. So I really understand this pick. I get it. It does make a lot of sense. I understand on the other end why some Panthers fans may feel underwhelmed because they feel like, hey, he's Ladd McConkey. You know what I'm saying? He's not the biggest, most intimidating figure there, but I think this could be the right pick. The other interesting thing that I noted about this draft and I want to point out is the people that we passed on, not just from the receiver perspective, just overall, because we all know that the Carolina Panthers, they could go BPA. I think they should go some form of weighted BPA, and weighted BPA is just like, hey, if wide receiver 8 is on the board, but you have edge number 3 on the board, you got to go edge number 3. The Panthers need impact players and an injection of talent no matter what. We need pretty much talent at all positions, and we need to address every position except probably quarterback. So I would not turn my nose up at anything, but obviously when in terms of weighted, you have certain position priorities that you want to take. Offensive line, wide receivers seem to be most important on our team right now. I would put wide receivers slightly above O-line at this point, but we definitely can need help on the edges. Getting another pass rusher with Brian Burns' situation being in flux. If there's a tackle or interior offensive line, like I said, I'll be willing to go there as well. If there's a dynamic tight end that can bring that type of stuff for us, I will be open to there. Just about being open. But the defenders that I wanted to point out they passed on is Chris Braswell and Chop Robinson. Now, Chris Braswell, he is a defensive end and edge from the University of Alabama. Very, very good pass rush repertoire. I think he's a first-round talent, and to be able to get him at 33 would be great. Like I said, this gives you a little bit of insurance for Brian Burns, but if you do keep Burns, you also have a young guy on a rookie contract on the opposite end to give you 2 bookends. It gives a little bit more freedom and a little bit pressure off of Brian Burns, and it makes that available. You can also add Chop Robinson. Chop Robinson has very similar measurables in terms of height and weight as far as Brian Burns coming out. Not necessarily the arm length and just some of the get off and speed that he has, but definitely a similar arch type with that 250-pound edge rusher, can get after the quarterback. I think Chop Robinson is also a first-round draft talent, and to be able to get him at the top of the second would be something that would be hard for me to ignore. But, and of course, like I said, wide receiver is a bigger need, but we need good players just in general and a team that we're rebuilding. BPA is not a bad way to go, as long as, like I said, but weighted BPA is probably my philosophy as a drafter. But I also want to continue to push through this draft to see who would be there at pick number 65, because remember, we have the first pick of the 3rd round as well. So we can look at Matt Miller's draft and see, okay, who does he have where, and figure out who didn't go in the 2nd that might have fell to that 3rd, and see who would potentially be on the board for the Panthers at 65. So let's get right back into it. The receiver run starts again here. Adonai Mitchell was chosen at 38 by the Titans. He's the next wide receiver to go after Ladd McConkey. Very, very interesting because there's going to be a run on wide receivers here, according to Matt Miller. You got Tez Walker with the Falcons, Troy Franklin with the Raiders, of course, with that outstanding speed. Xavier Legette going to the New Orleans Saints out of South Carolina. Malachi Corley out of Western Kentucky, teaming up with Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis. Very, very interesting move here. But overall, nothing really crazy going on in the 2nd round. But I think that who's available on the board that was missed. And I'm looking here and I see what offensive lineman went that we probably could look at, because I think the 3rd round has got to be O-line. It has to be O-line. Kingsley Suamatatai, I can't pronounce his name, a little bit tweener of a guard and tackle. He goes to the Cowboys. That's a big pick by them. Cooper Beebe, going to the Miami Dolphins. He's very he can move around pretty well. He's a mauler in the run game. We've talked about him on some of our previous mock drafts. That's a big pickup for them as well there. And they get Zach Frazier to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But that is the only offensive lineman that go in this round. So I think that the guy that would be on the board if you wanted to go offensive line, it's got to be Christian Haynes out of the University of Connecticut. I talked about him in my Senior Bowl video as one of the biggest risers. I think that he's pushed himself into the second round. So if it shakes out like this, you have to run to the podium with that ticket on fire before the ink is dry and turn it in and draft Christian Haynes. He's going to bring automatically an upgrade at the guard position, in my opinion, but competition at the center position as well, and depth there. I think he's going to be a guy that show that he can anchor in the pass protection game, and very, very steady as they come. And I've already, like I said, I talked about it in my Senior Bowl Who Made Money video. So if you want to check that out, go ahead and do that in my draft playlist. But Christian Haynes would be the guy I will be running to the podium with that ticket for, just because he's a guy that I think can help our offensive line tremendously from the jump. If you want to go Brendan Rice for wide receiver from USC, you can do that. Javon Baker out of UCF is going to be there as well, a wide receiver, or you can wait a little bit longer for him. But I think that if they go wide receiver in the second round, they're probably going to either go BPA, which is more likely than not offensive line if it shakes out like this. I think that being able to get McConkey and Christian Haynes would be 2 home run picks, and I would not be mad at the way this scenario played out for Matt Miller. Matt Miller is much maligned at times. I know he's notorious for writing off Luke Kuechly in his pre-draft process, saying that Luke Kuechly was a box score, a tackle merchant, and that he was only going to be a 3rd or 4th round talent. He ended up being one of the best linebackers of all time. That's a hell of a miss, but this is just a mock draft that we want to analyze. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has their own sets of eyes. I may not always agree with them, but this one wasn't that bad in my opinion. I want to get you guys' thoughts about the potential of Ladd McConkey at wide receiver at number 33, but also me sprinkling on Christian Haynes in that 3rd round. Let me get you guys' thoughts down below in the comments. I know you got some thoughts about McConkey because of some of the guys that they passed up on. I want to know down below. Let's chop it up and break bread down there. But I really appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel to get more draft content and Panthers content from me, your boy Aaron Duncan. I'll see you next time. Peace.